My name's Chris, and I repair my own audio equipment, and I also show you how to repair yours. So let's get started. Is purchasing an analog tape deck a disaster just waiting to happen, and at best it turns into an endless money pit? Let's find out. This video covers analog tape decks, specifically open reel tape decks. And it shows tape decks for my personal collection. But more importantly for you guys, I show you what it took to get these decks running and to keep them running. So no matter if you've got a broken deck maybe already in your collection, or you're thinking about getting into the open reel tape decks for the first time, hopefully you'll find some information that'll help you out. And if you enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate a big thumbs up. You may be thinking about getting a reel-to-reel for your vintage stereo system. An open reel deck is not something that most people are going to purchase as their first piece of equipment. Most people are going to get a receiver, a turntable, a pair of speakers, and then kind of add on from there. Heck, and that's the way most of us put our first stereos together way back when. Then at some point, you're into the hobby, you think, well, maybe I'd like to get a tape deck, maybe a cassette deck, or maybe an open reel deck. In this video, I'm going to talk about open reel decks, but really cassette decks, you've got the exact same issues that you would have in an old cassette deck that you would have in an old open reel deck. Here are some common issues that you're going to have with reel-to-reel tape decks when you pick them up on eBay, or garage sale, or flea market, or on Facebook Marketplace. And the two most common issues, old grease that cause mechanical issues, and old rubber, whether it's belts or pinch rollers, that just after 40, 50, 60 years, whether it's grease or it's rubber, if you haven't replaced the grease in 40, 50, 60 years, or replace something that's rubber after 40, 50, 60 years, that's probably going to be an issue. Of course, you still got the old electronics and these vintage reel-to-reels that you've got to be concerned about. But the first hump you've got to get over is normally various mechanical issues that you've got to clear up first. I use the old car analogy a lot because I think almost everybody's got experience with old cars, even if they don't have experience with vintage open reel tape recorders. But just imagine any car from the 60s, 70s, or 80s. There would be a lot of old rubber being replaced, as well as a lot of old grease being cleaned up and replaced. So it's not a surprise that these old tape decks need to have some restoration on them before they'll operate properly. The first thing to do is to just look the deck over. Just take a look at it, just as if you're going to go shop for a used car. Just look at it and see what you're getting into, because a lot of times the way it looks is basically what you're going to get. Very rarely are you going to have something that's covered in dirt and old tape residue and then just clean it up and have it work perfectly. It usually doesn't work like that. Of course, if you can, test it out. But a lot of times you can't do that. It's not hooked up into a system where you can just try it out. These decks, a lot of times, they're sitting in somebody's garage or they're out at a table at a flea market, and you're basically just looking at this thing, deciding whether you want to take a gamble on it or not. Speaking of gambling, eBay's always a gamble. I just recommend that you take a look at the pictures they've provided, but also email them and try to get as many details as you can about the tape deck before you purchase it. So once you've purchased the deck and you've looked it over and made sure that it looks like it's intact, all the parts are there, the first thing you want to do before you give it a try is clean up the tape path. And you may get lucky. You may clean up the tape path and the deck may operate fine. So that's the first thing you want to do, is get in there and get all of that old tape residue off anywhere where that tape runs. As I said, you may get lucky, and after cleaning the tape path off, you may have an operating tape deck. But don't be surprised if you don't. especially if you get one like I showed with the tape path being in that kind of shape. So that's probably not its only issue, but that's the first issue you've got to overcome, is clean that tape path off and give it a shot. So now I'm going to show you one common scenario that you'll have when you purchase an old vintage tape deck. So here's the issue. The pinch rollers are stuck, so when you try to put the deck into play, or you try to put it into pause, they won't move, or they move very little, and you have to manually move them with your hand, which you shouldn't have to do, obviously. So when you have this type of issue, the deck will act like it's in fast forward. You'll hit the play button, but the reels will just take off on you, because there's no pressure on the tape like there would be if the pinch rollers were operating correctly. This problem is common in really every brand of tape deck. It's grease that's 40, 50 years old, and like any grease, you guys know if you've got 40 or 50-year-old grease somewhere in your car, it's probably not much like grease anymore. So with the deck laying horizontally on the table, it's really pretty easy to get to, fortunately, in this X-10R, to get to that grease. It just takes a little bit of disassembly. It's pretty straightforward how you get to the pinch roller assemblies. It just takes a few tools, Allen wrench, screwdriver. There's really nothing too complicated about it. The only thing you've got to be concerned with is there are small washers in different areas. But you can see here, these should be just moving freely, and I'm having to move them manually with my hands. They should just bounce back and forth. And they just pull straight off. Again, it's pretty straightforward how it comes apart. You just, again, got to be careful of small washers. And then you've got to clean that grease and put some new grease in there. And if you do that and put it back together, which I did, and now look at those pinch rollers going up and down as I hit the buttons. Just up and down, up and down. That's what should be happening. I'm not having to go in there manually with my hand and moving them. So now there's a pretty good chance, yeah, it's going to play correctly. And now, because there's some pressure on that tape like there's supposed to be, so when you put the deck into play, it plays just fine. So talking about the pinch roller assemblies made me think about an issue I had with an Akai GX-255 open reel deck, the one you see right here. And it has to do with the pinch roller itself. The assembly, I didn't have any problems, even though I did go in and clean it up. I didn't have any issues like I just showed you with the X-10R gumming up with that old grease. But I did have a problem when I played in reverse. And let me show you here what was happening. So first of all, in this GX-255, it uses 4 heads. There's 2 playback heads, which you can see in this picture. There's one on the left and one on the right. And then there's 1 erase head and 1 record head. With this 4-head configuration, you can play in both directions, but you can only record or erase a tape in forward play. I have the deck in reverse play, and if you take a look at the capstan, right by where the pinch roller is and just before it goes under the head assembly, can you see the tape moving a little bit? Not being flat. Here, I've got a close-up. Maybe this will show it a little bit better. Can you see that? So something like this can cause all kinds of flaky issues, and that's exactly what it did. As you guys that follow my videos know, I've got a bunch of equipment, and most of it just sits around and I stare at it. And from time to time, I try to work my way through the pile and hook them up and listen to them. And, well, it was the Akai 255's turn. And so I brought it off the shelf and I powered it up like I always do. Everything seemed good. I loaded a tape in it. Boy, Boy, sounded good. I listened to it for a little while. I fast forwarded and I rewound, and everything seemed fine. So I threw it into reverse play, and one channel, I don't remember if it was the left or the right channel, was low. And I'm thinking, oh geez, it's probably something to do with the push buttons. Just like any piece of equipment. You guys got receivers that, the left channel coming and going, you push the high filter, the low filter, you move the balance control. Then the channel comes back and you think, well, I've got a dirty switch, I've got a dirty push button, I've got a dirty something, and it's just something that a lot of us live with vintage audio equipment. And so that's what I thought I had with this, is that you just sitting for a while and had to exercise, those push buttons. Well, I pushing along, and it was coming and going, so it kind of made me think, hey, this is probably what it is. But then I saw that tape fluttering along, and I'm thinking to myself, does it do this in forward play? So I put it in forward play. No, it was perfect. I put it back in reverse. Same thing I showed you in the video, just flopping along there. And I'm thinking to myself, when did I get this deck? And I looked back, I keep all my notes, and I purchased this in 2014. And I would bet you guys money. I'd bet you $1,000 each. I'd either be rich or I'd be bankrupt, I guess, on this bet. But that problem has been there since day one. Because what did I do? I refurbed the deck. I did quite a bit of work on it. And I recorded on it. And I played it back. But keep in mind, you only record in one direction. You only erase in one direction. You can play back in two directions. So I probably recorded, listened to it, thought it sounded good, probably put it in reverse, and it will work sometimes. It's not like continually one channel's out. You put it in reverse. I probably put it in reverse. It probably worked fine. I thought, I'm done. So this just goes to show you that you can't check the stuff close enough. And if you guys are out there and you've got the opportunity to buy an open reel deck and it is hooked up, try every feature, because I don't care how experienced you are, it's real easy to miss something, and you'd rather find out about it before you purchase it than after. So if you're able to, try all the features that you can think of while you're there, because you won't get another opportunity because it'll be yours. As I said, I'm pretty sure I missed this from day one. So now I needed to figure out what was going on with reverse play. And seeing that it had to do with the pinch roller, I thought the pinch roller was the first place to start. And it's the easiest place to start because it just a little cap unscrews and it comes right on off. The big problem is having another pinch roller to try. And fortunately, my Akai 220 uses the same pinch roller, which I was surprised when I did a little research here trying to find out what do I have around here to try, because the 220 was built in 1970. And it's quite a bit older than that 255, but it uses the same assembly. It looks a little bit different, but it's definitely the same pinch roller. So I went ahead and I just put the 220's pinch roller on the 255. Worked perfect. Absolutely perfect. In reverse play, the tape stayed perfectly flat. I was a little bit surprised, but I tried the easiest thing first. And I was just very fortunate to have a spare part around here to try. And that's the thing that's difficult for a lot of people, and a lot of times for me too, is a lot of these parts aren't interchangeable, but I just was lucky enough to have another Akai reel-to-reel deck here that used the same part that I needed. The diameter of my two pinch rollers off my 220 and my 255 are definitely different. There's a noticeable difference between the diameters. And looking on the internet, the replacement part is the same for these two decks. So I'm assuming both of these pinch rollers should be the same size. I really don't know that for a fact, but it's hard to believe they'd use the same part number and one would be slightly smaller than the other. And in my case, the one off the 255 is slightly smaller than the 220. So is this why I've got that tape skew problem with the original pinch roller off the 255? I really don't know, but I guess it's a pretty good bet. Another piece of rubber that you can count on almost all the time in these old tape decks causing you an issue is the capstan belts. Some tape decks are direct drive and they don't use these, but the majority that you're going to run into do use these rubber belts. And some of them by now have just disintegrated and turned into almost looks like a pile of goo. And other ones have just gotten worn out and they just don't work correctly anymore. They've gotten stretched out, and when you play back a tape or you record a tape, the pitch will sound a little off. Again, not a huge surprise from a decades-old piece of rubber. And I think it goes without saying, if your capstan belt is broke, then the capstan spindle's not going to be turning, which is what drives the tape through your head block. So you're not going to be able to record or play without a capstan belt intact. As I mentioned before, not every open reel deck has a capstan belt. They have a direct drive motor, and that's the case with this Akai GX-255. You won't have to worry about a broken belt in this deck. And while I'm showing this 255 again, I just want to mention about the heads in it. The heads are very durable in Akai decks in general. The ones I have, the heads are in great shape, even though the decks, some of them, have really been abused over the years. You can see all the tape debris that was on the heads and just on the tape path in general, and you wonder how long did it run like that. But there's no wear on the heads whatsoever. Always take any tapes off any reel-to-reel that you're going to store for a while. If you're going to play it the next day, don't worry about it. You just don't want to have the tape sit there and oxidize over months or years and create the mess that I just showed you. So having that tape skew problem in this 255 that I was talking about a few minutes ago, I went and dug up some old pictures from 2014, and this is the original pinch roller. So it was quite a mess I cleaned up more than a decade ago. But it makes me wonder, remember when I was comparing the two pinch rollers from the 220 and this 255, and the diameters were different? I just wonder if it was years of this deck being filthy and being used that caused my issue with my pinch roller. Well, talking about this GX255 is taking me down memory lane here. As I look back, I keep all my notes, as I said, and I just talked about the pinch roller information that I found. Well, I found some other information, and it goes along with this video really well of what you can expect when you find a used open reel recorder. And the first thing I did was just kind of like what I said in the beginning of the video, clean the thing up. And that's what I did. Then I powered it up, put a tape in it, hit the play button, nothing. Hit reverse play, nothing. More problems. But first I had to clean that tape path up. But as I mentioned early on, you can have electrical problems too, just like any piece of equipment. It's not all just clean up the tape path and have it just work for you. And so off I went troubleshooting of why won't the deck play. And it ended up being a bad bridge rectifier, which provides the voltage to the two reel motors. And so that was a good reason why it wasn't playing. But this is all kind of making sense to me now. It's kind of like I said, this is like bringing back memories. But anyway, I didn't have a bridge rectifier, exact same one, but I've got some bridge rectifiers. So I ended up using one that I had, and it was fine. It wasn't an exact replacement, but sat in there fine, had good long legs and everything on it. So I powered it back up, and both plays worked. Forward play and reverse, so I was good to go there. So I had made more progress. Finally, the deck was actually running, had a tape in it, and you could hit forward play, have the tape run, You could hit reverse play. Again, the tape ran, great. Then I found out I've got some sort of a very low audio issue going on. And it was really intermittent. Left channel, right channel. I tried a pre-recorded tape. I tried to record a little bit on tape. And then I took a look, and what does this deck have in it? The Notorious 2SC458 transistors that are all over the place in vintage audio, like in my Marantz 2270. They are notorious for causing issues. Sometimes it's low audio, sometimes it's no audio, sometimes it's noisy audio. Make a long story short, they've got to be changed out. And I changed them out with the KSC 1845s. And finally, for the first time, the deck was actually running correctly. I actually had audio. So back in 2014, there were three main issues. One, you saw the tape path being such a mess. Two, the bridge rectifier needed to be replaced. And three, transistors needed to be replaced. And that's the story of a lot of pieces of vintage audio equipment. It's not just one or two things, but I think I know what happened with this particular piece. Here's a picture of this deck when I first got it, just how I got it back in 2014 with the tapes in it. This is exactly how it was. The tape path was a mess. The tapes were in it. You know what happened here? Probably a long time ago, the audio started going bad because of those 458s. You know, maybe it was working, probably was working kinda, whatever they were using it. And obviously, something they never did was clean the tape path, right? So they kept using it, it's kind of working. Then one day they turned it on, they tried to hit play. Uh-oh, it's dead because of that bridge rectifier. That finally went out, and that's how they left it, just like that. Just like breaking down on the side of the road with your old car, you're done. You know, you just leave it there and you go home. And that's what happened here with this reel-to-reel. They just left it when it finally broke for good. So do I actually know that this happened? Of course not. But I think that's what happens a lot of times when years ago people had a stereo, they used it every day, and eventually it broke and they just put it away, and that was it. They put it in the closet, put it out in the garage or what have you. A great thing about vintage audio equipment is it was engineered and designed to last. A deck like this that was just put away can be brought back to life, and I have no doubt that this deck will run for many more decades before it ever does have to go in the closet or out to the trash. I write down notes when I purchase a piece of equipment, and I keep those notes from the day I bought it to today. And anytime I hook the piece of equipment up, I write down what I've done, what I've noticed, etc. Like in this deck's case, this 220D, it says I purchased it for $35 at a flea market. I would have not remembered that being 10 years ago. This type of information helps me down the road, like today, when I bring the 220D off the shelf. If something happens, I can go back to notes 10 years ago and say, it was happening then, or it wasn't happening. And in addition, it's interesting to me. I'm glad that I've kept this information because I can go back and see what I spent on a piece of equipment, to see the problems I had with the piece of equipment, and see what I've done to repair them. As a collector of this equipment, all of this information is important to me. If I was just flipping this stuff, you know, buying it on Facebook and then turning around, getting it going and reselling it, I wouldn't keep logs like this. So now let me tell you a little bit about this Akai 220D. You saw with the notes scrolling by here just a minute ago that I purchased the deck in 2016 for $35. When I saw this deck at the flea market, it really didn't look too bad. The tape path wasn't a horrible mess. I mean, it wasn't pristine, but as you've seen in this video, Many times they're a lot worse than this 220 was. One of the first things I noticed was I couldn't get the deck out of pause. It has a lever that's spring-loaded, and then there's a little button that says start, and you push that and it's supposed to release that lever and your deck's supposed to start. Well, it would not budge. I could push the button in, no problem, but the lever didn't move. So that was the first thing to overcome. And what I found out was, as you guys have seen earlier, old grease. There's what was causing it. It had basically just glued the lever in place. So I cleaned that up, put some new grease in, and then that worked perfectly. So I loaded a tape into the machine and it seemed to be fine. And then suddenly it just quit working. I couldn't put it in play, I couldn't rewind, I couldn't fast forward, I couldn't do anything. So I took the back cover off and I found a little bit of a surprise. One of the 50-year-old start capacitors decided to blow its guts all over the place. That just happened after I had powered it up because it was working for a little while. Not a huge shock. 50-year-old capacitors, they're about ready to go anyway, so I went ahead and replaced them. I didn't replace them with the original can capacitors. They're not available, and even if they were, I think they'd be too expensive. And I was able to use some modern start capacitors that are still used in air conditioning equipment, and they worked fine. Of course, they didn't mount the same, but really, who cares? They were very inexpensive, and they'll work probably for the next 50 years until those have to be replaced. Once I got the problems all sorted out with the 220, and it seemed to be playing, recording, fast forwarding, rewinding fine, it was time to put it up on the test bench, where I used MRL test tape along with my Sound Technology 1510A, which is a piece of equipment that tests tape decks. And it was quite a high-end piece of equipment back in the day, which was around 1980. It's a pretty cool piece of equipment. It's a lot of fun to play with. So these three decks that were in this video, the Akai 220 and the Akai 255 along with the Teac X-10R, these are pretty representative of what you can expect to find if you purchase a reel-to-reel on eBay, on Facebook Marketplace, on Craigslist, at your flea market. Most of the time, this is the type of deck that you're going to run into because there are not that many vintage tape recorders out there, whether they're cassettes or open reels, that have been maintained well by a competent technician because they just don't exist anymore. So in my opinion, I think there's really only two choices for people who want to get in to vintage tape decks. One is you kind of do it like me. You purchase something inexpensively. You hope you don't have major problems. You kind of hope that you can fix it. Don't put a lot of money into it, but it may take you a lot of time to get it going. But a lot of times, as you've seen from these three decks, you can get them going, and it's not that terrible of issues that hold you up. I'm not saying that you can't go buy a boat anchor sometimes. I've bought them before, but most of the time these decks can be repaired with a little bit of time and effort, and a lot of times not a lot of money. So that's the first option for people. The second option is you buy a deck that's been refurbished by an expert. I don't think there's any in the middle for me. I don't think there's like the $100 deck that looks a little better, so it's a $200 deck, or the $200 deck comes with a couple tapes, so we'll call it a $300 deck. I don't think they exist. I think all the inexpensive ones that are out there, for 99% of them, you're going to have issues with them. You just are. They're not going to work properly. You either take them knowing you got to work on them, spend a little time, a little bit of money, and you can probably get them going, or you bite the bullet and you pay the big bucks. There's guys out there that still do sell great quality reel-to-reels, but you're going to pay for them. You're going to pay for them. Something you might be able to pick up for $100 that looks like a train wreck sitting there at the flea market might be $1,000 if you buy it from somebody who's competent, who went through it, who has the test equipment to actually test it, and not just the test equipment, but has the experience too, because these things can be tricky mechanically. Electrically, they're about the same as any other piece of equipment, but there's a lot of adjustments in them that you start turning knobs and you really get yourself into trouble without really the proper test equipment. And as I said, you've got to have the knowledge of how to use it too. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a big thumbs up down below. And if you're not a subscriber, please think about becoming one. And as I always say to my present subscribers, thank you so much. Y'all have a good day.